who has a reading. Please come forward.
Hi everyone, my name is Laura. I'm one of Cynthia's nieces. I wanted to share with you the lyrics of a song that my father and I listened to when Cynthia was in the hospital. They've stayed with me since the summer, so I thought I'd share them along with some reflections. The song is by Melanie D'Amour. It goes, "For you I sing, the light that brings the voices of the children." So Cynthia was a fun and kind aunt. She was young. She was 19 years old when I was born, and only 17 when my brother was born. So she had lots of energy. I remember running around at the beach with her and her dog Livy, playing games and laughing with her as a kid. And one of my favorite memories was going to shows with her. In her costume designing days, she got us tickets for whatever show she was working on and brought us backstage like true VIPs. I was so excited to go backstage to meet the actors and singers and walk through all the costumes and get lost in the clothing. I loved being in the show environment backstage and the excitement of Cynthia's world. She even made a costume for me for Halloween when I was 7 or 8. I had wanted to be a carrot, and Cynthia agreed to make me a carrot costume. It was very fancy, with orange foam all around me, very wide at the top and getting narrow down to my feet, with a green hat and very large ostrich feathers coming out of the top for greens. She was running behind and making it, but was so dedicated to getting it to me that she put it on a plane and flew it to me, so I got it on Martha's Vineyard in time for Halloween. The only glitch was I couldn't bend my knees, so I had a very memorable night of walking and rolling and no sitting. It was my most memorable Halloween ever. The next lyric goes, "For you I sing, the colors bright, dancing on the rainbow that moves across the darkened sky, the bridge that crosses over." The week that Cynthia was in the hospital was definitely a darkened sky, and it helps me to think that there was a rainbow that moved across it to help her cross over, giving her a bridge to whatever's next. And I imagine her dancing on that bridge with her smile and her laugh. It says, "To all the places we have been, to those whose love has carried us, like the birds who rise on wings through the clouds and over." So we can imagine all the places she's been in her entire life, the trips with so many different people, the places in New York that she loved, Central Park, the ocean in New Jersey, and all the love of so many different communities that can help her soar like a bird and rise through the clouds and over. "For you I sing, the colors bright, dancing on the rainbow. For you I sing, for you I sing, for you I sing the rainbow." Please join me in a moment of silence for Cynthia. You might imagine her dancing on a rainbow, or as a bird through the clouds and over, or maybe laughing and doing something fun, just spending a moment to send her some love. Thank you.
Thank you. That lovely piece was performed by pianist Isaac Benayala. And now we're going to hear from Assemblyman Danny O'Donnell. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Dan. Good afternoon. I'd like to begin by offering my sincere condolences to the Doty family and to all those who loved her and lived with her in their heart. It's somewhat ironic that that song was played preceding my speech, because it was the first dance at my husband and my wedding, where Cynthia was a guest. I don't like these services. I went to many, many of them as a child, and they were very, very painful. But all of those people, including my own mother, we knew they were dying. They faded in front of us, and we knew what was coming. This is such a shock and such a horror for someone to fall in their apartment and not wake up. It's just simply unjust. Cynthia and I ran against each other for the job I currently hold. And what they don't tell you in campaign school is that you're going to get to know who your opponents are very, very well. And not all relationships survive that struggle, I can tell you. That was never an issue, because the decency and the thoughtfulness of what Cynthia was and is was evident from the very beginning. And when I did prevail, she became my greatest ally and my greatest advisor, because I could count on her always not to agree with me. No, this is the West Side, that'll never happen. I could count on her to give me a thoughtful analysis and conclusion to a question I asked. You could almost see her brain pause to think, what is the right way to frame this answer? And I, for one, am bereft at her passing. I will miss her dearly. But she will be most missed by the community she lived in and loved, because she did so many things for this community, and the community doesn't always know that she did them. But they're going to know that she did them, because they probably aren't going to get done without her there to do it. So if you knew her and loved her, I'm sorry for your loss. If you knew her as an acquaintance, then you will be missing her too. And in the end, we should all try to find solace in the joy that she brought to all of us, and the joy that she exhibited in her life. I only learned 6 months ago that she liked birds, and I've known her for 30 years. So if you didn't know her that well, she was a wonderful, wonderful person, and we are all better for having lived in her midst. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assemblyman. We're now going to hear from Councilmember Gale Brewer.
Cynthia Doty was a doer, a leader, and a wonderful human being. What a combination. We will miss everything she was. As a district leader, she took her job seriously, as you know, not only collecting petitions, posting notices for upcoming elections, standing on street corners, rain or shine, but also following up on a myriad of complaints from Three Parks members and from the public. She loved Three Parks and was a loyal member of the club. And I thank the current members of Three Parks for scheduling and hosting this memorial service. Cynthia was so good at her job as district leader that County Leader Keith L.T. Wright nominated her to be the Deputy Chief Clerk of Elections for Manhattan. This job meant many headaches for her, but it was a godsend for us Manhattanites. Most recently, she brought together board staff, Goddard Riverside staff, Westside Democrats, and me to find a way to once again open the Senior Center at Goddard as a poll site. Everyone wants it open. The federal government says that the building is ADA accessible, but the Board of Elections says that under the new ADA guidelines, it is not. People use wheelchairs there every day, go figure. But with Cynthia's help, we determined that a long gangplank, that might not be the right word, but that's what it looked like to me, into the backyard of the building and through the kitchen could make the site accessible. Only Cynthia could pull this meeting off, and for years she calmly, consistently, and often with her sense of irony, explained why or why not the board could solve a problem in the manner that the caller wished or didn't wish. As a leader, Cynthia was president of her West 103rd Street Block Association. Such a job was innocuous until open streets arrived on her block. It is an understatement to say that her neighbors disagreed on the value of an open street, only in New York, the process by which it had been instituted, and the next steps. The tension was so intense that I had to find a professional mediator. The meeting with such a person took a long time to schedule, and only some resolutions came out of it. I think we all agreed that we need more mediation, but I was afraid that this job, as head of the Block Association, had killed Cynthia. We spoke every day about the issue and ways to resolve it. In fact, not knowing she had passed, I was calling her for a follow-up. Cynthia was a bird watcher in Central Park. On her way to the park, she stopped by West 94th Street to see if the bump outs there would work on West 103rd Street. I will leave our discussion about them out of the address today. Cynthia was also a member of the 24th Precinct Council. She supported the Bloomingdale History Talks, as you'll hear, and so many more grassroots efforts. She attended and participated in thousands of Democratic political events and meetings, always making intelligent remarks. If they were long-winded, it was okay, because whatever she said needed to be said. Most of all, Cynthia Doty was my friend, as she was yours. When I walked into a crowded room, she was one of the first to welcome me, and as someone who tries to be several places at once, the warmth and recognition always made me feel at home, and I'm sure many of you feel the same way. Hanging out with Cynthia was also fun. Stories and laughter were part of her charm. She had a never-ending supply of them, and she had lots of knowledge, that's in quotes, which in my world is helpful so we can navigate the intricate world of politics. She shared, but she was discreet. There was no malice, no quid pro quo, and no favoritism. I'm a bit lost without Cynthia. Like each of you, I will miss her terribly. She was especially fun to plot with when we had to figure out how to convince some of the large institutions in Manhattan that they should have poll sites when they most definitely did not want to have one. I have lots of emails back and forth on this quest. My condolences to her biological family and to her Three Parks family. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. We're now going to hear from the Honorable Keith L.T. Wright, leader of the New York County Democrats. Thank you.
Good afternoon. On behalf of the New York County Democratic Committee, my co-district leader, Wilma Brown, and the other lady who accompanied me today, who actually is trying her best to fill the shoes of Cynthia Doty. Rhonda Evans is with me here today. I want to give our condolences to the family and certainly to the Three Parks family. I first met Cynthia when I was working for David Dinkins, and she was part of the staff of Ed Sullivan. And on that staff, he had some real powerhouses. He had a woman named Janie Green, who was the mother of Pam Perkins, who actually worked at the Board of Elections for many, many years, a district leader. You had a gentleman by the name of Greg Watson, who was on that staff, also who became deputy commissioner at DHS, some real powerhouses. And I can tell you that Cynthia did more than hold her own. And plus, Ed Sullivan was no slouch to work for. I'll tell you that right now, because I served with Ed. So let me fast forward. Cynthia became a district leader in 1993. I became a district leader in 1991, and we did what district leaders did. But the one thing that really jumped out at me when I first met Cynthia was that she really cared. She cared. No issue was too small or too large, but she really cared for people, and she cared for her community, and she cared for public service. Fast forward for in 2002 when she ran for New York State Assembly, and for 2005 when she ran for New York City Council. I know we have a lot of elected officials in this room and people that have run, but you gotta be half crazy to run for office. You gotta be nuts. And I put myself in that category as well, believe me. But Cynthia was never one to me that would ever light up a room. She was not one whose smile was infectious, if you will. She wasn't the most charismatic person in the world. But when the work needed to be done, Cynthia did that work, and she did it well. Whether it was selling buttons, opening up storefronts with other clubs, and selling buttons during presidential campaigns, because these storefronts are not cheap. And they made the rent by selling the buttons. And Cynthia made me buy at least 100 buttons, I'll tell you that right now. Or whether it was tabling for voter registration in front of, what's the supermarket y'all got down there? West Side Market. West Side Market. Cynthia was there. She did the work. Why? Because she cared. She was a consummate public servant. She didn't look for headlines. We have Danny O'Donnell, we have some elected official in this room that will knock you over as soon as they see a television camera in the space. Cynthia was not one of those persons. Cynthia was not one of those persons. She cared. She worked at the Board of Elections, I forget what year, but in 2017, we had a void, we had a vacuum at the Board of Elections. And I was honored to be able to support her candidacy for that job. And she served in that job with a steady hand. And she served with that job with intellect, absolute competence, and with honesty. And with absolute honesty. No community was ever ignored with Cynthia at the Board of Elections. No one vote was ever suppressed. And I can tell you, no one was ever disenfranchised when Cynthia Doty was Deputy Chief Clerk of the Board. Now, I know we have a lot of political firepower in this room. I don't see any reason why the block she's on, the block she lived on, should not be renamed for Cynthia Doty. We have Congress people, we have council people in this room. Lord, there's Assemblywoman Dickens is here, and my main man, Danny O'Donnell, is here. But I saw a borough president here. Didn't I see a borough president? There you go. Borough president, hear what I just said. You got a rousing round of applause. That might be good politically for us. So I just want to paraphrase, in finishing, I want to paraphrase the 106th mayor of the city of New York, David Dinkins. And it so fits for Cynthia, because she was a consummate public servant. Service to others is the rent that we pay while we are here on earth. Cynthia is paid in full. Don't ever let Cynthia look down on any of us here today and see that any of us are in arrears. Thank you.
I want to thank you all for coming to the Cynthia Doty Memorial Program and the Danny O'Donnell Roast. We are now going to hear from Doug Kellner, co-chair of the New York State Board of Elections. Thank you, Doug.
Well, thank you, Keith Wright. Certainly one of your finest appointments was to name Cynthia as the Deputy Chief Clerk at the New York City Board of Elections for Manhattan. And that title, Deputy Chief Clerk, not many people in the room may realize is a little bit of a misnomer, because the Board of Elections is a bipartisan agency, and in 1974, when they started divvying up the positions at the board, the chief clerk position in Manhattan was given to the Republicans and the deputy chief position was given to the Democrats. But obviously, given how things are organized in Manhattan, the Democratic deputy chief clerk certainly has a very significant role to play. And people don't fully realize just what a serious job that is. There are almost 10,000 poll workers who have to work on election day, and it's the full-time staff that are run by the chief clerks that have to recruit and train those people. They have to locate poll sites, as Councilmember Brewer pointed out. That's a very difficult task, and we have hundreds of poll sites in Manhattan. They have to maintain the voter registration list of 900,000 registered voters in Manhattan. They have to maintain the voting machines and make sure that each and every one of them is working properly and before election day. They have to rejigger the lists and the poll sites and poll lists every time there's a redistricting. And it is a very significant task. And as many have pointed out before, Cynthia was great at organizing the logistics. She was somebody who could handle this project. And there's one quote that Cynthia gave when she was talking about the people who worked for her and that she was leading. Election workers are among the unsung heroes of democracy, putting in countless hours to make sure that local elections are run smoothly and that every voter can be heard. And Cynthia believed that, and she carried it out, and we thank you for that, Cynthia.
Thank you, Doug. lovely. We're now going to hear from Curtis Arluck, District Leader with Broadway Democrats.
Hello to everyone, especially County Leader Wright, and in memory of Cynthia Doty, I am proud to be wearing this Manhattan Democrats button. I first met Cynthia Doty in 1988. It was, I believe, the second Broadway Democrats, Three Parks Democrats campaign storefront. That was when Cynthia was beginning to transition from her illustrious theater career to her even more trying and challenging political career, to the towering work she would do on behalf of elections, of political causes, issues, you name it. Cynthia did it. We always had this little banter going. We are roughly the same age. She was a little bit older, but I had a little bit more seniority as Democratic District Leader, so there was a little bit of a thing of who's the big sibling and who's the little sibling there. But Cynthia, in addition to her other many virtues, was just the most organized and together person that I have practically ever met. So I cheerfully cede to Cynthia. Cynthia was the big sister and I was the little brother that was trying to keep up. We worked together on so many things. It was such a thrill to watch Cynthia help build Three Parks into just one of the most effective clubs, not just on the west side, but anywhere. Her work for Assemblyman Ed Sullivan on so many important issues, and also helping so many constituents. Worked with her most recently when she was the Deputy Chief Clerk of Manhattan, and this is one of the most important things I can say about Cynthia. While it was easy for all of us in the political world to honor against unfair, especially media criticism, to honor the work of the people in the Board of Elections. They're too often portrayed, especially in the New York Daily News, as hacks. But we all stood together knowing and valuing the important work that she did, that they do. But Cynthia, in addition to all that, fought for every single worker that she supervised. She recognized the contribution they were making and the humanity that they brought to the job. And she bled for them when they were unfairly criticized. And she helped me, I know, because occasionally I would be upset that somebody in the Board of Elections had done something that didn't seem to make any sense. She helped me to recognize these are people, and we must value their work. So I personally will miss Cynthia Doty most when I get a call or a message that the 19th election district, which used to vote across the street, now has to vote half a mile away. That happens quite a bit, by the way. You could always call Cynthia, and Cynthia would always take care of it. I will miss Cynthia when we're marching for causes, for community concerns, for issues, for those storefronts. I will miss her in that capacity. But most of all, I and we should miss one of the finest people we've ever met. If you want to work on something important, to do a good job, to do that job with competence, with intelligence, and most of all, with humanity, that is what we will miss about Cynthia Doty. Thank you so much, Cynthia, for all the work you've done, and I'm honored to be joining all of you in honoring Cynthia's service. Thank you.
Thank you, Curtis. We're now going to hear from Terance Hanrahan of the West 102nd, West 103rd Street Block Association.
Growing up as a boy on Long Island, my dad was a lector at Sunday Mass, and he said, if you ever get up on the altar in front of a room full of people, for goodness sakes, adjust the microphone, speak clearly and slowly, and look at the people that you're speaking to. So I'm going to do my best. My name is Terance Hanrahan, and I was a member of the board of the West 102nd and 103rd Streets Block Association for about 25 of the 35 years that I have lived on West End and 102. I had the pleasure of serving side by side with Cynthia during those years, and I'm honored to be asked by the board to say a few words of appreciation in front of the Doty family, elected officials, and the community at large. Trying to get an idea of what I might say, I thought, let me see what dictionary.com says about block association. Here's the definition. An association of residents of a city block who work together to maintain a safe and attractive neighborhood. Origin of block association. First recorded between 1970 and 1975, which is when our block association was formed. Now check this out. How to use block association in a sentence. In once shaggy places like the Upper West Side, community was defined in terms of property value, and community boards and block associations fought homeless shelters and zoning changes. Aren't you glad that we're not so shaggy anymore? This is actually a huge compliment to the work that block associations do. Formed in 1971, our primary mission was to fundraise so that we could afford a security guard to walk the 4-block jurisdiction of our block association after dark, which gave us a measure of increased safety at a time when street crime was a very big problem. Let's look at the second synonym for block association, community. In order to gain momentum from the residents of West 102nd and 103rd to join and support our block association, we needed to establish a sense of being a community working together for the betterment of the neighborhood. Volunteers like Cynthia Doty stepped forward and helped create events that still take place today. Our quarterly newsletter, in which we feature Cynthia on the front cover of this issue, and there's a few copies in the back, and it's on our website if you'd like to read it later. Our quarterly newsletter is hand-delivered to over 1,000 apartments the old-fashioned way, by building captains bending over and sticking them under the doors of each apartment in the buildings that we service. Our annual yard sale became a day when all of our neighbors would take over West 103rd Street and have a party while selling a few gently used goods. The planting of flowers each spring in the tree beds gave the appearance of a neighborhood where residents really cared about how things looked. A Halloween party each year on West 102 allowed new young families to become part of our community by participating in a fun event with their children. Each year on the winter solstice, we gathered to sing holiday carols of all denominations to brighten the shortest day of the year. And I tell my non-urban friends that we do solstice caroling in the city, and they're like, what, really? You do that? We do. So more than 50 years from our founding, the Block Association remains strong, and Cynthia played a very, very strong role in that. Every block association should be so lucky to have a member of their board be someone who has experience navigating city politics. Perhaps Cynthia's greatest contribution was guiding other members of the board to know where and to whom to turn in order to rectify an issue. She was like a traffic cop for routing persons to solutions. Cynthia knew which elected officials and/or what city agency had the authority to resolve a given problem. And she did so very matter-of-factly and allowed us to become an efficient organization that learned how to, quote, get things done, unquote, well before our current mayor adopted that as his catchphrase. Personally, I always thought Cynthia's greatest asset was her sense of humor. Board meetings could sometimes turn contentious. Imagine that. With strong feelings about one topic or another, and board members getting a little feisty with one another. Cynthia would listen quietly until all the speakers had had their say. Then she would deliver a deadpan line of sarcasm that would have us all laughing at our own self-seriousness. Self-effacing humor was another important asset, and Cynthia was known to make wisecracks about herself and also sometimes about organizations that she belonged to, like the Board of Elections, where once in a while mistakes were made from time to time. As others today have mentioned, Cynthia went beyond her commitment to our own neighborhood block association. She was the vice president of the 24th Precinct Community Council, a member of the Interfaith Assembly on Homelessness and Housing, the Morningside West Harlem Sanitation Coalition, National Night Out, West End Avenue Preservation Society, West Harlem CSA, Bloomingdale Aging in Place, Bloomingdale Neighborhood History Group. Think of all those meetings. In closing, I'm going to borrow a line from her nephew John Doty's tribute that appeared in the West Side Rag and is in today's program. To honor Cynthia, let us all dedicate ourselves to doing something kind for others, to fighting for an impossible cause that we know is the right thing to do, and to take time to walk on the beach and listen to the birds. Think of her when you vote. And the next time someone asks you to sign a petition, think of Cynthia and go ahead and sign it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Terance. We're now going to hear from Winifred Armstrong and Peter Ardenson from the Bloomingdale Neighborhood History Group.